Welcome to Body Efficiency Training, and this is Sovereign Self-Defense Part 2. Now, this series is really dedicated to the sovereign movement, and these guys have basically realized that the state has overstepped its mark quite significantly and is operating a very corrupt legal system and a very corrupt financial system, and we're all suffering at the hands of this corruption. So these guys are working out different ways to push back and set the record straight. In other words, they are enforcing the real law, the natural law, the sovereign law, the law of the living man and the living woman. So this is very important because what we're operating under is a legal system, and this is very, very corrupt. Now, I'll leave links below to a website and a YouTube channel called The Sovereign Project that talks a lot about this in greater detail. And here what you've got is this clip from a video from Banaman, and these guys you could call sovereign warriors. They're at the front line and they're resisting when the bailiffs and the police are coming to evict people from their homes. Now, this is done illegally and unlawfully, and we'll hear now what this guy Mikey is going to say about it and what they're actually trying to do here. They're protecting the rights of the individual.
Alright, right. Just very briefly then, obviously you're trying to communicate and share your information. What do you think the problem is here?
To be honest, it's a bit of a grey area, because, I mean, to be fair, these guys seem a bit more professional than usual, and they actually seem to know what they're talking about. So if they are going to produce a High Court writ with an embossed stamp, first, I'm going to be fucking gobsmacked, secondly, it's fair game, yeah? However, I don't believe we're going to see it. But I'm just literally guessing now, so we've got to see what turns up. If they've got a proper warrant, and we've got the judge's name, and there's a phone number to verify it, and we've got the rubber stamp on it, then we'll go from there. If we've got a little shitty bit of paper with a little fucking stamp on it that I can go and buy from the pound shop with no signature, no accountability, and doesn't meet their criteria for a validation of a warrant, then it's just fraud at play as usual, isn't it?
So you can see that these sovereign warriors are really pointing out the law, the true law, the common law. And so a lot of what they're doing is simply standing up and talking. So they've got to have great confidence. But sometimes, of course, it comes to the real front line and it gets physical. In other words, the bailiffs are actually trying to push their way in unlawfully and actually illegally, both. And so you've got to resist it, and you're fully in your rights to do so. So this is why this self-defense series is all about. I'm trying to explain the method of using your body, the bone structure in your body, to resist against force or pushing and pulling against you. And this is very efficient, and it's much easier than using muscular strength if you can get the alignments of your bones right. So let's have another watch now of Mikey when he's dealing with things a bit more physically.
Employer like that just removed. So unless you've got a warrant, no, we're protecting him. Without a warrant, guys, you can't come on the property. Without a warrant, you're not coming on the property. Because we stand time and time again, you lot support the bailiffs.
Yeah, well, look at that,
You're not coming on it.
It's the bailiffs.
You're not coming on the property.
Yeah.
Get out of here with that.
No dogs there.
So why are you wandering around with the weapon out?
Are you intimidated?
Yes, I am. You're here supporting bailiffs. Yes, I'm intimidated. No, you're not allowed on the property, mate. You need to get off the property then, mate. Come on, mate. Come off the property, mate. Come on, mate. Off the property. Don't touch me. Off the property. Come on. Officers, we've got an aggravated trespasser.
Aggravated trespass.
You can't prove your claim, mate. It's an aggravated trespasser, isn't it? No, it's a private right of access removed. Don't touch me. Stand down there and I'll show you. Stand down there, I'll show you. I'm not touching you. Come down there, I'll show you the law around how you're making a mistake.
You're pushing me.
I'm not.
You're pushing.
I'm not. I mean,
Is that being removed?
don't do it.
Are you stopping us from leaving?
Yeah.
So you see this guy, Mikey, at the end is even stopping the police from leaving because they have actually been breaking the law and they've been stepping outside their own guidelines. So these guys are really educating. They're pointing out where the law is actually being broken. You're not following the common law, and the common law really derives from natural law, and it's instinctive. We should all know this. It's do no harm, do not steal, and do not cheat. Do not commit fraud. It's fairly obvious. And these guys are doing all these things in the name of the law, so they need to be corrected. And it's done to quite an extreme level where you're actually pushing people out into the street. So now, I'll leave links below to this video of Banaman, so I thoroughly recommend his channel, and you can watch this video in its entirety, because there's a lot going on here. And you can learn a lot about why this needs to be done. And hence I'm dedicating this whole series to the sovereign movement and to the sovereign warriors. See, what they've got to learn is how to stand up strong. It's all about the alignment of your bone structure. So I'm trying to show it now here. You lock out the legs, squeeze the glutes, pull in the belly, lift up the rib cage and shoulders so you stand up nice and tall. And there's a slight tension, a stretch through your body. Now you're rising up and down on the ball of the feet, and you're feeling a stretch in the ankle and a stretch through the whole body. Now what I'm trying to explain in this session is a sort of elastic power. You've got to get a spring in your step, a bounce through your body. And this is through the joints more than the muscles. It's not so much about the overt muscle groups, it's about the tendons and ligaments that control the joints. And if you can get control of these, you can get this little bounce, this elasticity in the body. So this is very effective for absorbing, pushing and pulling, and also bouncing and pushing back, you see. So first of all, we're getting a little spring in the step. So this allows you to move efficiently and absorb and push and pull. It's like a jump. You're learning how to jump, but using that jumping power in a very small way. And you've got to use it through correct alignment of the bone structure. If the alignment of the bone structure goes wrong, you'll feel that the force pushes you out of alignment and you lose your balance, you start moving. If you get the alignment just right, when they push you, it goes through the bone structure to the ground. So here, trying to keep a nice vertical spine and just shifting your weight forward and back or side to side between the hips. And what I'm trying to do here is push with one leg into the ground. So I've got a bounce in one leg. I'm pushing from the ball of the foot, so the ankle is stretching, the knee is stretching, and the hip also. The hips have got a slight backwards projection, like you're sitting on a chair. So there's a slight backwards arch in the spine. And you've got to do this stuff very slowly and very carefully, because you've got to feel inside your body. It's about an awareness, a body awareness. It's not really about fighting yet. You see, when you get good at this and it's subconscious, then of course you can start using more power, more speed, and it becomes applicable to fighting and even wrestling, because when you're on the ground you need control of your limbs, the joints, to be able to wrestle. So now what I'm going to have a go at is the arms. So you're trying to again feel this stretch through the tendons and a bounce through the arms. I'm starting with the fingertips, flexing the fingers back, so I've got stretch in the wrist, then the elbows, then the shoulders and the scapula, they go back. You see, I've got a stretch in the wrist, elbow, shoulder blades go up and back. I've got a backwards arch, and then I'm stretching forward. So what I'm doing is feeling a stretch through the tendons, and that gives an elastic recoil. Now, if you watch my series, The 9 Principles of Body Efficiency Training, you'll see I explain this in much greater detail. It's number 3, I think, elastic recoil. Now we're trying with one hand at a time. So again, you've got to have the forward stance, so your weight is going forward, your spine is vertical, you're feeling the alignment from the back hip driving your weight forward, but a slight backwards arch in the spine, rib cage is open, sternum tilted slightly upwards. And then from there you can extend the arm and push. So we're both doing it. He's pushing, but I'm absorbing. So we both got to practice the structure. And you see how slowly and carefully we're doing it. We're not competing. It's about the internal feeling. You can feel it. If you get it right, you can feel it in your opponent, your partner. When you push them, it just goes to the ground. So now we're trying with feet together. So he's just being a weight. So he's trying to feel a resistance to his body, and I'm pushing from a forward stance. But I've got to feel the alignment from my back leg through the hip, through the spine, through the rib cage is up and back, then through the elbows drop down, through the wrist and right to the fingertips. And if I can get this alignment right and this stretch right, you see the stretch is through the wrist, he's leaning into my fingers, they're flexing back a little bit. I can feel a stretch in my wrist. That's creating an elasticity, my wrist wants to bounce back. That's the principle. If you can feel it in your wrist, this flexion of the wrist going back, it wants to spring forward. This is the elastic recoil, and you're trying to extend that feeling into the elbow, into the shoulder, into the scapula, into the spine, and down through to the hips, the knee, and finally the ankle. Because ultimately you'll be pushing from the ball of the foot on the back leg, through the hip joint, through a twist in the spine. Now, so he's moving back a little bit. Ideally, he should not be moving back. You see, if he had his structure just right, the back leg would lock, and he can't move back. So only I would be the one moving back. So now again, he's trying with the 1 foot forward, so I'm being the dead weight for him. So as he pushes me, see that was better now, he went forward, only went forward. So the extension comes from the back leg, through the spine, through out to the hand, the wrist, and finally the fingertips. It's a flow. You're trying to get what is called a kinetic chain. You're moving in sequence from the ankle and the knee, the hip, the spine, the scapula, the rib cage, the shoulder, the elbow, the wrist, and then the fingertips. And you're pushing in that sequence. And now we're pushing into a step. So you're trying to keep a forward flow. It means the front foot has got to pull a little bit. You've got to pull yourself forward with the front leg and then switch over to pushing when it becomes the back leg. So you see now he's got to step forward. I'm resisting to give him a slight resistance, but I'm going back. You see, we're not competing. We've got to feel it. And it's so delicate, this alignment. It's literally millimeters. This is why Tai Chi and things like this, these take years of mastery. And you wonder, why are they just doing the same thing over and over again? How's that any good? It's not about the movements that you're doing. It's about the method you are using your body, the way you use it. You see, you've got to get it just right. You'll feel it, and until you feel it, it's very difficult to believe it. So this is, you see now again, you see his hips have gone forward, he's sinking his weight forward, the spine is vertical, so he's driving his body weight forward from the back foot, he's on the ball of the foot, that was good. Then you pull from the front leg at the same time as pushing from the back leg, so you're driving yourself forward, you're creating the elasticity in the legs. So here again you can see I'm pushing and pulling between the legs. So this leg is bouncing. The back leg there is bouncing into the ball of the foot. I'm extending that away, creating a stretch through the leg. That's creating a bounce into the hip. That hip is twisting. I'm twisting the hips forward into the spine, and I've got a neutral spine, but I'm stretching through the spine. That turns me round, and then from the stretch in the spine, it goes to the rib cage, the scapula. The shoulders are up and back a little bit. So I'm activating the scapula, and then only then I'm extending forward, but you'll see I'm still keeping a good spine. And then finally even extending the fingertips. So the line goes all the way through. And this is perfecting your form. This is like very, very simple Tai Chi, just a push. And this is what you're trying to practice and perfect. Now, again, in practicality, it's never going to be like this. And that's what we're going to work up to. We're going to work up to freestyle movement. But you've got to practice ideal scenarios to try and get the feeling of it. It's very difficult to get this feeling of inner flow. There's a flow from the ground, through the ankle, the knee, the hip, the spine, the arms, and finally the fingertips, right out to the end. Now this is another way of practicing it, and you're practicing extension right to the hands. So we're interlocking, we're both pushing, pushing each other, but you've got to push all the way to the hands themselves. So you can see the back foot has got to drive into the ground. That drives a twist in the hips, and your body weight goes forward towards the front hip. But the hips are still projected slightly back, so you've got a backwards arch. It's like you're expanding the hips at the back and also the front. And then this has got to convert up to the shoulders and the scapula, the rib cage. Elbows are twisted in, wrists are flexed back, and then you're pushing. But you're trying to push from the back foot all the way through to the wrists, the palms. And it's tricky to do, and when you feel force, you've got to gradually increase, and you'll notice where the force dissipates. You'll lose it. It'll go in the elbow, it'll go in the hip, or you'll feel it in the belly. And that's the other thing I haven't mentioned. You've got to pull the belly in tight. The navel is always pulled towards the spine. This supports the lumbar, and you're activating the obliques. The obliques and the TA muscle, the transversus abdominis muscle. This is the one that pulls the navel inwards. And you have to always do this. This will support the lumbar spine, and this creates power up the spine. The midriff, this in Tai Chi or in Qigong, this is called the Qi belt. This is the area where the Qi builds up. So there's always got to be a bit of tension there, otherwise your lumbar is very weak and bends backwards. So the same thing again on the other leg. See the belly pulled in. There's a twist. There's a very slight twist from the hips through the spine. And this is again, you've got to feel it. This twist will allow an elasticity to go through your body. So not only are you getting this alignment right, you're now trying to stretch open the joints, create an elasticity in the bones, in the joints rather, the ligaments. So this push is absorbed through the joints themselves. Now in Tai Chi this is called opening the joints. You're opening, expanding. There's a slight expansion in the joints themselves. And you've got to do this by using an isometric tension. You're sort of feeling it yourself. Now we're practicing a little bit more freestyle. I'm pushing him in different ways, and he's got to try and fall into a resistance. So he's sinking his body weight forward into the front hip. It's not about working hard. It's about trying to fall into the correct alignment. Use your body weight, but find the right geometry of the bones. So now he's doing it to me. Now I'm trying to keep parallel legs and now dropping back to one leg, so there's a different effect, and he's trying to change the angle of the push, and all I'm doing is falling into a structure to resist it. I'm not actually fighting back. And now he's trying one arm at a time, so he's pushing me from one side. Now that means I'm resisting with a twist. You see, there's going to be a twist through the spine. But again, I'm trying to drop my body weight into the front hip, maintain a vertical spine, and I'm absorbing that push through a twist evenly through the whole structure. And this is why you've got to feel it. It's not just in the arm, not just in the shoulder, it's through the spine, it's through the belly, the obliques. And now I'm showing the legs by themselves. You see, now there's what I'm explaining here. There's a twist through the joints, and if I can feel this twist, I can even use it for striking. You can see what I'm doing here is twisting the hip, then twisting the knee, then twisting the ankle. And this twist is opening the joints, activating the tendons, and creating a whip down the leg. And this is the same thing I've got to feel when I'm holding the structure, a twist through the joints that creates an expansion, a stretch through the joints. Now here you can see the arm, rolling the rib cage, rolling the shoulder, then the elbow, then the wrist. And this creates a little whip, a twist down the arm, and you can see how this leads to different types of striking. It even leads here to a hook strike. But it's the same principle. I'm trying to activate the tendons and the ligaments through the joints in sequence. Now here, whether I'm striking and creating something, or when I'm resisting, just holding a structure, it's the same principle. You've got to feel how the flow happens from the core outwards, or in terms of the structure, from the ground up through the structure. So I hope this made sense. Please do go back and check the first part of this series, and do stay tuned for part 3 coming very, very soon. So thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in any of these other videos here.